What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I'm welcoming back Chris Condon. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Um,
Happy
we've
to be here.
we've had you on a couple times, talking about that Texas Blood, and then last time we really dove deep into the Enfield Gang Massacre. Really love that universe and world you've created, and you kind of teased some stuff at the end of our last interview that you were working on some stuff, and a couple times later, here we are. You got some stuff from Marvel, you got some stuff from DC coming out, so you seem like you've been busy.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy, schedule-wise, but it's all good. I'm really excited about it all. I'm doing Green Arrow, which is a character that I've loved forever. I remember in high school, a friend and I passing back and forth the trades for the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run, and just a character I've always enjoyed, whether it's the Mike Grell stuff or the Mike Barr, Trevor Von Eden stuff, which I love Trevor Von Eden's work.
Mhm.
And that stuff plays directly into what we're doing in our story arc called Freshwater Kills. So yeah, it's really fun to be able to play with that stuff. And then with like the ultimate stuff, I was saying to you off the air, but it feels very much creator owned, from a creator
Mhm.
perspective, where we're very much allowed to do whatever we want. That Will Moss, the editor, like right from the get-go, was like, "These are your characters. Like, pretend they're your characters. Do whatever you want with them." And I was like, I don't know if you mean that, but so far so good. I've been allowed to do some really interesting things, I think.
Oh, well, I'm excited to talk to you about a little bit of Green Arrow and a little bit of Wolverine, ultimately, just kind of explore, obviously what you can and stuff. But how did you get connected? Let's focus in on Green Arrow a little bit. How'd you get connected with DC and getting the opportunity to write Green Arrow? Something like you said you've had a passion about that you loved. How'd that kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate. I know a lot of other creators kind of that they have to like track editors down and let's send them new work and be like, hey, if you have anything in mind for me, yeah, keep me in mind, blah 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 blah, that kind of thing, which is like part of the game. But I've been really fortunate that I started off with that Texas Blood and the Enfield Game Massacre, which has a very strong voice. And so people want me to bring that voice to DC or Marvel, and that's exactly what happened. I did a story with Jacob for Harley Quinn, so that was our first DC thing, and that was together. But for this, I got an email from an editor named Chris Rosa. I was actually in Ithaca at Ithacon, which is a college-run convention, and it's really fun. Got to hang out with Roger Stern
Oh,
and
nice.
Walt Simonson, so that was fun. Um, but I got an email from him when I got back to my hotel room, and it was just, any interest in doing more work for DC. And I was like, well, hell yeah. I mean, I'm a DC guy, overall. I mean, I love Marvel, but DC is really where I cut my teeth
Yeah.
and as a reader. So I have a very strong affection for all those characters in the universes, if you
Yeah.
want to. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So I got this email from him. I responded and was just like, "Yeah, I'm really interested in doing more. What do you have in mind?" And he was like, "Do you like Green Arrow?" And I literally right next to me had the issue where Speedy's friend died of a heroin overdose. It's like I literally had just been reading it, and I was like, I love Ollie. Like, what do you have in mind? And I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get a short or
Yeah.
maybe a one shot or something, but maybe it's probably something in like an anthology. And Chris just goes, "Well, this is top secret because it was at the time." And he was like, "Josh is leaving. He's leaving at issue 17, and we're looking for a new writer to come in and take over." And I literally just like left the house and went for a long walk because I was like, "What the? Can I curse or no?" But
Yeah.
I was literally just like, "What the hell is going on? Like, I don't know. This is a lot of stress. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is big leagues. I mean, that's like kind of what processing I had to go through before I even said yes.
Yeah.
Um, and at the end of the day, like I was always going to say yeah. So that's how that happened. It kind of came out of nowhere. Chris had just liked my stuff. and I'm able to just, I am very fortunate there. I again off the air, I kind of was talking to you a little bit about editorial oversight, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I am very much able to bring my own sensibilities to the book, which is
Yep.
really amazing. I do think that it feels a lot, at least to me, and I hope readers feel this way, especially readers who are familiar with my work, like that Texas Blood Volume 3, which is my favorite Texas Blood volume.
So good.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to I'm trying to, attack character first and foremost,
Mm.
and build in some intrigue. So there's, we're doing a lot of the things that I would do in the Texas Blood, and bringing Ollie back around to his leftist, assholery, which was one of the things that I loved about him. And I don't know if he's not been that person, but it's not been at the forefront of his character for a while.
Right.
That was something I wanted to bring back, from, in particular his days in the 70s and 80s, especially under Denny O'Neil and Mike
Yeah.
Grell.
Well, and because with that, when that kind of that version of Ollie, you get, it brings out these storylines, and especially like in your 8 pages that we got to see of, even dealing with Batman and confrontation of kind of
Hmm.
like what you're processing and what you're dealing with, because when you're picking up with Green Arrow, kind of some big stuff has happened in the universe with
Yeah.
the absolute power, and Ollie was a vital part of what happened in absolute power.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, so the decision so what the mandate to me was they wanted to go more Daredevil with Green Arrow, which made sense to me because
Yeah.
I always was a fan of street level Green Arrow, and that was always something that I was interested in as a reader. So when they came to me and asked me to do it, that was their one mandate. They wanted to do that. They wanted to, because in the previous run, Williamson's run, which is great, it is just, it's all Arrow family.
Hmm.
Arrow family centric, and then it's also just bouncing around, in time and space, and he's, with the Legion of Superheroes and like everything. It's like crazy, really, big stuff happening. And then Absolute Power, obviously, where he, seemingly betrays everyone. So when it came time to tackle what we were going to do, what I thought was, well, it makes sense to do the street level stuff if we separate them from the family.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of them, they're there. They're just, I thought it'd be smart to kind of have him go off on, I saw one person refer to it as a monastic retreat, and I would say that that's like pretty accurate. I think that he wants to like process everything that happened on his end and on his family's end, and kind of get back to his roots of what he was doing. And Josh really teed me up well in how he finished out his run, with, Green Arrow, you know going back to the street level, and then, where we're going with our run. But it just made sense to kind of, make him a solo figure rather than a familial, patriarch.
Yeah. Well, because of all the stuff too that, happened previously with absolute power and stuff like this, it seems like he needs a mental reset anyways, because he's trying to deal with everything, and like, it's, if again, we're talking about up to Arrow 17 now. So if you haven't read it, Green Arrow 17, you should. But, you have these concepts of like, that people have said like, hey, we forgive you, we understand, and then you got Batman who's still a little hesitant, but like it almost is like now Ollie has to kind of go through that own like understanding of who he is, and what he had to
Yeah.
do. And
I mean, and it's part of, Martian Manhunter, and making him believe that he's actually, turned heel,
Mhm.
and gone to Waller. And I think that that probably messes with somebody, even if you're like, well, no, I'm good now, but, at the same time, it's like, you're like, I don't want to go, out partying with everybody. I need some time to, decompress and to really think about my place in the world. And I think that's what he's doing. And in the next issue, I mean, we really see him, he's out on his own, he's doing his own thing, and then his past comes back to haunt him, which is, classic noir setup and all that. But it's very much, I love. I know some people haven't read it because it is a little older, but I love diving back into stuff that I, read when I was a kid. In this arc, we're dealing with stuff that directly happened in the four-part miniseries that Mike Barr wrote and Trevor Von Eden illustrated, which was the first Green Arrow solo series ever, which is wild that it took that long to get there. It was from 1983. But I got to do that in the Venom War Daredevil issue I did. I got to play with a lot of Frank Miller's stuff, which was really fun. Just because I thought it made sense. And same thing with Harley Quinn, got to go back to Mad Love, and and this is I like to play with the history of it and not just the recent history,
Yeah.
because there is this deep history with these characters where you go back and back and back and back. And once we're finished with this arc, I did a Reddit AMA, and everybody was asking, "Are you going to bring back any villains? Are you going to blah, blah, blah?" And everybody wants to know what you're going to be doing. I'm part of the I'm of a mind that you don't want to reveal too much because I feel like that's where we're at nowadays with
Right.
things is that people want to know everything, and I don't really think that's healthy in consuming a story. And also then your expectations are driven up, and I think that ends up hurting the story. And so I want to make this thing as good as possible and have it live on its own. But like, I'm really excited about when we're finished with this arc, which introduces a new villain. But tied to the past, tied to stuff that did come before. So there is that. So there is that sort of tradition in there. But I'm really excited in the next arc if it sells well enough and we're able to continue going. I do want to dive into some of the other. I want to bring in some Arrow family stuff for one thing, and deal with that. Uh, and then also bring in some villains from the past and get to play with them and
Yeah.
hopefully put a good spin on them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people feel like that's one of the things that's sort of you know, not as well represented in Green Arrow's um, in his comics is the his rogues gallery. He doesn't really have a great rogues gallery, so
Right.
hopefully I could build that up a little bit. But we'll see.
Yeah. So how do you then, you're coming off of, you know, these worlds that you've created in like, West Texas of, that Texas blood and, the small town vibes, you very much character driven. Obviously the setting is also a character, it feels like too. How do you kind of bring that comic writing into what you're doing here with Green Arrow?
I mean, so this is a metropolitan story. It takes place in the city and the suburbs of that city, and I mean that's where I grew up. So I mean, that is very. I'm very at home telling that kind of a story. How the suburbs are impacted by the city. I mean, I grew up in a 9/11 happened when I was 10. So there's that
Mhm.
impacted how I lived. In the suburbs in Metuchen, New Jersey, outside of the city. And so I'm bringing a little bit of that into it. But yeah, in terms of like the writing of that Texas Blood specifically, I think it's just kind of narrowing in on character and how community and
Mm.
environment impacts the character. And that was one of the things that there's a big, great double page spread in issue one of this arc. I shouldn't say issue one, it's issue 18. Issue 18 of Green Arrow, where I basically told Manchester, I was like, just draw the hell out of the city. Like that's what I want to see the city. Because I want it to feel as big and expansive, and I want to know what the city's like to Green Arrow. Like how does he interact with the city? What does it mean to him? Especially after being, bouncing around through universes,
Mhm.
coming back down to the city and just enjoying that. So, I mean, I think that that's what I try to bring to it is just, the environment and the relationship between an individual and their environment,
Yeah.
and also, how they interact with their community. I think that character is like the biggest thing for me. Just, if a character feels false, it just the whole thing's going to fall apart. So I try to get the voice right.
So, you talked about your love you already had for Green Arrow. growing up, and like when you got the call, you were reading a Green Arrow sitting right by your desk.
Yes.
Right. How do you go then in prepping for this, right? Like paying homage to what has come before. You mentioned a lot of these great runs like Meg Grail and Mike Barr and these characters, and how much research, how much like do you pull from just memory that you've had? What's your kind of process for figuring out what your Green Arrow? Because you want to kind of, I assume you want to bring your own voice to it, but still, like you said, you wanted to kind of go into who you thought Ollie was in the 70s and 80s more too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, so in terms of what DC wanted, they just sent me the Williamson stuff.
Okay.
That was all that, and some Absolute Power stuff, just so I could get a bearing on what they were doing. For me, I mean, I went back and I read the Brad Meltzer stuff and the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester stuff. So I went back and I read as much as I could, including all the way back to the Kirby stuff. So I really dove deep into the history of the character. And just, even, some of the backups that he was in Brave and the Bold and Detective Comics, which there's a direct reference to in that short in 17 that one person picked up, and I was like, damn, that's a deep cut. I'm surprised that they got that. Um, but yeah, I try to get, acquainted with the history of the character because there is a history there, and I feel like you would be making a mistake if you ignored that
Right.
as a writer, because there are fans out there that have been reading this character for years. There's also fans who have given up on the character, because a particular arc didn't, appeal to them. But, now that there's a new creative direction, maybe they'll want to come back on board. So you want to appease those people, but at the same time, I very much wanted to kind of, what I try to do, and this is the same thing with that Texas Blood or anything that I do. I absorb as much material as I can so that I can then write it without having to, be sitting there like I'm studying for a test, that
Right.
I can actually, I know the voice already. I can just step into it and I get it. And one of the things that's actually really helpful for me is there was a great voice actor who played Green Arrow in Justice League Unlimited. So when I'm, writing dialogue, I kind of repeat the voice back to myself as I'm reading in my head as that character's voice. And that's something that it helps me kind of just be like, oh, that sounds authentic to me. Like I feel like he would say that.
Yeah.
So that's something for me. But yeah, I don't know, a little bit of both. I feel like it's beneficial as a writer to, you know, be studying, know the material,
Mhm.
but also be putting your own spin on things. Because you can't really rely too heavily on what other people have done because I feel like you're just going to disappoint people in the end,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Well, so you got Green Arrow, and then we mentioned a little bit earlier, you also are working on Marvel, and probably one of Marvel's most iconic, well-known characters. You're now stepping into the Ultimates universe. Like, talk to me a little bit about Ultimate Wolverine.
Well, it's a little crazy. I mean, I don't know. I've been a Wolverine fan forever, and so Will Moss texted me or emailed me and was just like, "Hey, can you hop on the phone?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can hop on the phone," because I knew he's the editor of the Ultimates line and Thor and Avengers. So I was like, I'm curious what he's going to offer me. And my inkling was probably, I was like, he's probably gonna offer me like Ultimate Daredevil or something. That was like in my mind. I was like,
Yeah.
that's like that fits my vibe of what I do. He's probably gonna offer me that. And I just did a Daredevil thing. So I was like, let me see. So I get on the phone with him and he goes, um, Ultimate Wolverine. And I'm like, oh. And like, I mean, it's a little crazy. I mean, just to even see the fan reaction to it, just based off the design. I'm nobody's read anything yet for it, but I think that what we're doing is again, in the same way with Green Arrow. I mean, it's very, you know, reverential. We look back at what came before,
Mhm.
but we're also doing our own thing with it, which I think is again what you got to do. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're playing with the history of, for example, like Weapon X, Barry Windsor's Weapon X, and Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X, which is one of my all-time favorite comics. I think it's one of the greatest comics of all time. And just, thinking about, how we bring that into the Ultimate Universe, because that's a totally different universe where Colossus and Magic and Omega Red are the people running the Eurasian Republic, and how do you approach that? And it seemed like a no-brainer to me to make that sort of the central figure of the story, and to make him not Weapon X for Department H and K in Canada, but
Yeah.
to make him instead the Winter Soldier. I just thought it was a no-brainer to me. A perfect way to shake things up for the Ultimate Universe. And so that was kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
But
Because
yeah, it's just wild. It's crazy. I don't know. I still haven't wrapped my head around it.
right. Well, because in the Ultimate Universe, it kind of allows you to kind of do your own thing a little bit more, I feel like, than something that of like, coming off of something like, what happened in DC with Absolute Power, because the Ultimates is a little bit more freedom of these universes. Like you said, it's a separate universe.
Yeah, and that's really fun too, to just kind of play with what Dennis is doing in Ultimates. And yeah, I don't know, it's just, and that's the part of it that's really fun, is the whole like creator owned aspect of it, where it's like, obviously I don't own this character.
Right.
Marvel dictates what happens at the end of the day. But um we're making those decisions. It's we're the ones who are going, I'm the one thinking, I think this would be pretty cool if I did this with this character. And, what if I kill this character and do this with this? And I'll run things by Dennis and be like, are you using this character? And he'll be like, no, I'm not using that character. Or in one case, he's like, I'm using that character, but they're XYZ in this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So like maybe there's another, back road into doing this kind of thing. So it's really fun to be able to play with it and to truly be, you know, creative, and not just trying to meet a deadline, or just to tell a story to sell a book, which I feel like, I wouldn't say that I've ever had that happen to me, but that's sort of the feeling sometimes with some books, is that like, oh, why are they putting this out? Oh, there's a movie coming out.
Right.
This is just because there's stories to tell, and this is what they should be doing, is giving creators the opportunity to tell their stories in the best way possible, and that's what Marvel's doing, and it's kind of an amazing opportunity to be able to do that, especially with Wolverine. I mean, we haven't even sold one issue yet, but it's going to be, I guarantee you, it's going to be the biggest book of my career, and I don't even can't even fathom what that's going to be like. Um, but it's going to be crazy to see the numbers coming up. But yeah.
That's well, how much of a more collaborative process is it working in something like Green Arrow or Wolverine that are in these more expansive universes compared to something like that Texas Blood, where it's, you and your creative team, that's, you and Jacob working on that world, it's, and, a couple other people maybe here or there. But like here, I feel like this, like you said, you got to check in with Dennis, what's going on, and we'll, with other Ultimates and things like this. How does that change your creative process of how much collaboration you have to have, or does it?
Um, I wouldn't say that much changes at all.
Okay.
And well, I've done some Marvel work and DC work. Well, the DC work that I've done has been with Jake, so I can't really, that really wasn't much of a difference. Just, editors giving Jake and I notes is really the only difference there. But with Marvel, I mean, in the stuff that I'd done previously, um, I wasn't really in conversation with the artist. They just got my script, and which is, I think that's kind of what Jake and I do. I'll write
Right.
the script, or I'll call him and just kind of be like, this is the story I'm thinking about. What do you think? And they tell me like, I think that's good. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I just write the script, send it to him, and he's like, that was great. And he'll just start sending me pencils. Um, and that isn't too different, in terms
Right.
of working with people, collaborating with them. But Marvel, outside of the Ultimates, you don't really talk to the artist so much. It's
Okay.
really sort of hands off. Um, But, with the Ultimates, Alessandro, I mean, he's Italian, so we don't get this, we don't speak the same language. He speaks a little bit of English. I speak no Italian. Um, except for grazie. But it's like, but we do, also, for one thing, there was not because of X-Men, but there was a thing in issue one of Wolverine that I was like, work a lot of X's into the surroundings. Not because of, I mean, sure, because of X-Men, but also because a lot of people die, and I'm thinking of Scarface. If you've ever looked at the movie Scarface, the original from 1932, um, the director Howard Hawks did a really brilliant thing, and he's put every time there's a scene and somebody's going to die in that scene, there'll be an X somewhere in the scene. Whether it's on a window or in the scaffolding or wherever. And if there's three people going to die in this scene, there's three X's, and so that's the kind of thing that he does. And so that was one of the things that I talked to Alessandra about, was that kind of, collaboration. And that was separate from our conversations with Will, which are very much, more business related, where he'll send in pages, we'll give notes and blah, 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 blah. But in terms of like batting back, ideas
Yeah,
back and forth, like that's kind of, that's definitely opened up a bit, with Ultimate Wolverine. With Montos, not so much. We definitely bet things back and forth, but it's with the editor. He comes at it with ideas. I'll give him my opinion on what I think, based on that idea. But, it just sort of depends on, at the end of the day, I like to give the editor the last call
right.
because I feel a certain way about it, but I don't own these characters, so I don't really care. I can go either way. Like I feel like it should be this way, but I'm happy to do whatever. I'm not gonna lose sleep over whether Ollie has his face covered or not, for
Right.
example, which was an idea that I had just because I was like, it's stupid that he's like, oh, my friend, Green Arrow. And I'm like, you're clearly fucking Green Arrow, Ollie. Shut up. Shut up. And so I was like, why wouldn't he cover his face? And he always has this like scarf around his neck. I'm like, why
Yeah.
doesn't he just pull it up? Why doesn't he do that? So that's one of those things where it's like, I don't really, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but it's
Right.
like, it seemed like a cool idea to me. And, people seem to be digging it. So I'm like, okay, let's go with that. Um, so I mean, I don't know, like the collaboration thing, it's sort of, it all is dependent, but I wouldn't say
Um,
anything's like drastically different. The biggest thing for Jake and I in that Texas Flood is that, final decision comes down to us. That's really at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing.
yeah.
Is that we make every final decision. There's no other person that it goes to. It doesn't go to the editor and then he has his say and then it goes to the company for approval and it goes through legal and blah blah blah. But that we don't do any of that. It just comes to us. We say we want to do it and we ride or we die based on our own decisions. And that's the wonderful thing about that collaboration. Um, and we're excited to get back to doing Texas Blood, and we're doing another thing that's very much the same kind of vibe, although it is with a different company. So, yeah, so it's definitely a joy to be able to do image independent stuff
Yeah.
because that's at the end of the day, that's the stuff that matters to you.
So we are gonna get more Texas Blood eventually.
Yeah, next year, summer, we're aiming for. Whether
Sweet.
we'll actually make it for summer, I don't know, but we want to do like we've done where we go June to December. So there's 7 issues, including a Christmas
Okay.
issue.
Yes, I love the Christmas issues. I'm looking at it. Gang, if you are just watching this interview because you are like, oh, I love Green Arrow. Oh, I'm all about Wolverine. Those are great reasons to watch. However, if you've not heard that Texas Blood, you've got to go back and check this out. And the Mill Gang Massacre, the trade hadn't come out by the time we talked last. It looks beautiful with what you guys did with
Mhm.
the newsprint paper and stuff like that. So Ah,
Yeah. And that's, that just to reiterate, yeah, I feel bad for the people that read it digitally because you're missing out on like a key aspect of it, which is the newsprint paper. It's, it's the smell, it's the feel, it's the
mm.
vibe of the whole thing as part of the story, I feel like. So it's definitely better when you get it in print. And you're going to be spending money on it anyway, so why not just get the book? Unless you're stealing it, which you shouldn't do because you're just stealing from us. There's no, conglomerate that you're stealing from. You're just stealing from two guys who don't make enough money as it is. So
And if you do steal, Green Arrow and Wolverine will both hunt you down.
there you go. Yeah. That's going to be the next issue. Yeah.
Always, that's the new art, guys. We spoiled it. Always just hunting down people that pirate comics.
It seems like a thing he might do. I don't know.
I, you know,
Uh,
but I want to respect your time. I know you are busy. I hesitate to even ask, like, I've asked you if there's more Texas Blood coming out, and you said yes, and we got Green Arrow and Wolverine that you're working on. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you're like, oh, I'd love to mention this?
there's an announcement next week. I don't when is this dropping?
This is gonna drop in late November.
Okay. All right. Well, then this news will be out there. So, as we record this, it's going to be next week. But there's a book that I'm doing with Oni Press, which is a one shot, and it's called The Goddamn Tragedy. And if you like the Anfield King Massacre and Texas Blood, you'll probably like it. It's drawn by a guy named Sean Curanero, who's a great Canadian artist, who I was really fortunate to get to know at TCAF when I went 2 years ago. And we had from that point on sort of been like, oh, we want to work on something together. And I pitched this idea, whether as a mini series or as a one shot to Oni, and they wanted to do it as a one shot. So we're doing that. And it's basically the pitch is the Donner Party meets The Shining. And yeah, so if you like what we do with that Texas Blood and the Enfield Gang Massacre, it's like similar vibes. It's just a different artist who has a different kind of take on
Okay.
how he draws these things. But he does have a great knack for drawing Western characters. He has a great book called Cave Grave that's out, and there's another one that I'm forgetting the name of. But Cave Grave is great. So if you could check out his stuff, they're all, he owns the book. So if you want to buy one, the money goes directly to him. So,
Nice.
but that announcement will be out. I think that's the only other thing I'm doing, and then Cruel Kingdom, the dark fantasy, and Creep Show, late November. I have three things out. November 27th, Green Arrow 18. The 2000 AD annual. I have a story with Fernando Blanco,
Oh, nice.
which was fantastic. And depending on whatever way the election goes, it will read different because it's about the insurrection, but starring chimpanzees. And then I also have at Creep Show issue 3, where I did a story with Martin Morazzo, which I think I pronounced his name correctly. But anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan of Ice Cream Man. So to be able to collaborate with him on a thing was really great. It was actually one of the stories that EC didn't pick up, which I felt like was one of my better stories. So I was like, well, shit, I'm gonna bring this over to Creep Show, and we did it, and I think it came out really, really good. It's really cool. It's much better than I even thought it would be. I didn't know what artist I was gonna get, and then they go, Martine wants to do one. Oh yeah, that's awesome. So that's and yeah, late November got a lot of stuff going on, so that's
So
good.
by the time this drops, gang, you have a lot to pick up here.
And hopefully you like at least one of the things.
It's a wide range, right? You
Yeah,
gotta you'll figure it out. You'll like it eventually. Chris, where can people follow along with you? Stay up to date with all the announcements that you do have coming out. So when new things drop, that they can be first to hear.
sure. Definitely the Patreon. I have a shared Patreon account with Jacob Phillips. It is patreon.com/Condon Phillips. We update it regularly. We both do newsletters. We share exclusive content. I'm about to put up a post about, breaking down the new costume for Green Arrow and how we kind of came to that decision to make that costume the way it is. And then I also send out letters once a month to people, We do a postcard, so that's really cool for fans to be able to interact with us in that way. But I'm also on Twitter and Blue Sky, the same handle. It's at Christoph Condon. It's Christopher at the ER. So Christoph Condon, and then that's it. That's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about your work in comics. Like I said, I've been a big fan of yourself with that Texas Blood from the get-go. And so when I saw and got to read Green Arrow and now Wolverine, I was like, yes, perfect. So I'm so excited to get to continue to read your stuff. You are coming one of my favorite writers. So
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I hope you dig all the stuff that we're doing. I think it's exciting. I'm really, as a fan,
yeah.
that's the thing is I kind of think about it all like as a reader, what would excite me, and so that's what I aim for.
Well, and I think too, like you mentioned the X's in the background of like that attention to detail. Like it's so, that's what I kind of like to hear from in a creator team, like that those little things even matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you, being so supportive and even making Martha's Casserole.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, gang, because that was in one of the Christmas specials, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
it was in issue 13, yeah.
yeah, so gang, if you missed that, there is a recipe for Martha's green bean casserole in the back of issue 13, and then my wife and I did that. We made that recipe, and it was really good.
There you go.
It was it was
You
really
got a
good.
good book to match. There you go.
So, but I will link all those things that we talked about, the Patreon. I'll even link the green bean video in the description of this video, or if you're listening on podcast. But make sure you go out, support Chris, what he's working on. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.